Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. It's February, February the 1st of 2021. And I'm so excited today because we finally have moved on from January. And I think I'm very ready for February, in spite of everything that's going on with increased cases, restrictions of curfew, threat of lockdown. I think I'm ready to take on February. It's often said that the eyes are the windows to one's soul. And often, when you look in someone's eyes, there are many things that can be seen. So, whether it's a proud story, a beautiful story, a heartwarming story, a happy story, it could be seen from one's eyes. But on the flip side, of course, it could be a sullen, shameful, dark, tearful, and even diabolical story. What stories do your eyes tell? Just have a listen to so many stories that can be seen as one looks into someone else's eyes. The eyes, they tell their stories of that snot-nosed, mad, abandoned little boy whose drunken father had beat his mother for many a night and then left him and his siblings in scary silence, all alone on a rain-drenched, cold night. The eyes, they tell their stories of that bright-eyed, studious, athletic teenage son whose scholarship had finally come through, and he was eagerly awaiting that long trip to his new school, 500 miles away. But of course, his mother was celebrating with joy, even if she could not even write her name. The eyes, they tell their stories of that gorgeous, free-spirited, resourceful young entrepreneur, female of course, whose business had finally taken off the ground, and that huge sum of money from that unknown donor had secured her that prime location she had been waiting on and eyeing for so many months. The eyes, they tell their stories of that young, loving, now single and widowed, self-employed father whose daughter was just diagnosed with brain cancer, but the hefty sum needed for her surgery was so much out of his reach. And as if to make matters worse, the in-laws had threatened to cut them both off. The eyes, they tell their stories of the wife, mother, student, employee whose facial features were tired from countless sleepless nights of all those demands, and she was so completely overwhelmed. The eyes, they tell their stories of the quiet, studious, smiling child whose grades were good, whose behavior on point, but whose inward burden of guilt and shame and so much fear was just too much for her to bear. The eyes, they tell their stories of that rebellious, foul-mouthed teenage girl whose battle with abuse had hardened her look, crushed her dignity, and ravaged her trust because no one had chosen to believe her. The eyes, they tell their stories of that solitary, dejected, withdrawn priest whose career had felt the downward plunge because his indiscretions had brought him so low, and he simply hadn't had the urge to glow. The eyes, they tell their stories of that heartless, steel-eyed serial killer whose exploits had spanned for many a year. And now, after being finally caught, he was unbothered by the grim outcome. The eyes, they tell their stories What stories are hidden in your eyes? What stories are hidden in my eyes? The eyes, the eyes, the windows to our soul tells so many stories.